right, when we solve a system of 3 variables and we have 3 different equations, I like to label them as equations 1, 2, and 3 so I keep them organized. So I'm going to take equations 1 and 2 and have them stacked on top of each other. 3x minus 4y minus 4z equals negative 16. Then the second equation right underneath it, just to start getting us all nice and set up. Minus 2z equals negative 24. I'm going to make sure I have all my negatives correct because that was the mistake that we made yesterday. We lost track of a couple of our negatives. Okay, now I'm going to take equations 2 and 3 and write them right next to it. It's totally okay that we're going to use that second equation twice in order to start our elimination adventure. All right. Just a little bit of setup. Okay, so I took equations 1 and 2 and stacked them here. I took equations 2 and 3 and I stacked them here. Now, to start, you just have to decide for both of these problems that we just set up, we need to make sure we eliminate the same letter. It does not matter which we choose. I'm going to be sort of strategically lazy. I see that we have a 4 and a 2 with the z's and a 4 and a 2 with the z's here. So I think the z's are going to be the easiest for us to start, even though you could correctly have started with x or y. So in order for elimination I'm just going to focus in on this first problem, and then we'll come over here. So like I said, I just picked z, and we're going to make sure that we eliminate z over here when we get there. In order for this to be ready, we need these two to combine to 0. And so we need like negative 4 plus 4z in order for that to go to 0. So we're going to think to ourselves, what times negative 2 would get us a positive 4? Because negative 4 plus 4 is going to eliminate to 0. I know 2 times 2 is going to get us to 4, but that's going to be a negative 4. So sometimes with our thinking, and remember, even though we're doing all of our thinking with just the z's, we don't just multiply the z, we're going to multiply the entire equation by whatever we're thinking. Because in order to balance equations, when we multiply, everything has to get hit with that multiplication. So I know 2 times negative 2 will be negative 4, but negative 4 minus 4 is going to be negative 8. So we need to make sure we flip the sign after we multiply, and so we're going to make that a negative 2 as a multiplier. So negative 2 times negative 6 is positive 12x. Negative 2 times 5y is negative 10y. Negative 2 times negative 2z is positive 4z. That was the whole point. Equals negative 2 times negative 24 is positive 48. A negative times a negative. I like to cross out the equation that I multiplied so I don't get confused. Okay. Now we should be ready to combine these up if we did this correctly. Negative 4z plus 4z is 0. That was the entire purpose of choosing that negative 2 as a multiplier. Now 3 plus 12x is going to be 15x. Negative 4y minus 10y will go down to negative 14y equals negative 16 plus negative 16 plus 48 will give us 32. Okay. And now we're going to use this little answer that we just got in a minute. But now we're going to go to the other equation we set up, and we want to eliminate the z's as well. So we're left with an xy equation here and an xy equation here. So just like the other one, in order for the z's to be eliminated, we need the same number on the z, but one positive, one negative. Luckily, these signs are already different. So we just have to ask ourselves, what times negative 2 will make that a negative 4? And in this case, it's just a good old 2. And even though we zone in our thinking on just the z's to pick our multiplier, everything needs to be multiplied to get it all set up. Okay? So then 2 times negative 6x is going to be negative 12x. 2 times 5y will be positive 10y. 2 times negative 2z is negative 4z. 2 times negative 24 will equal negative 48. I'm going to cross out the equation that I multiplied so I don't get confused. And now if we did this correctly, the z's should go to 0. 4z minus z, 4z is 0, and that was the whole purpose of that, multiplying that top equation by 2. Now negative 4x minus 12x will give us negative 16x. Negative 2y plus 10y will give us positive 8y. That already went to 0. 0 minus 48 will give us negative 48. Okay? Now, I have a little xy equation from this first problem and an xy equation from this one as well. So now I'm going to take those two and I'm going to stack them on top of each other. Now that we've been able to eliminate it down to just two variables. Okay, positive 8y equals negative 48. Now, once again, sorry, that's a really crappy 15x minus 14y. My notebook got a little wonky. So here, you have to choose. Do you want to eliminate the x's or the y's? And it literally does not matter which one you pick. Since these x numbers seem a lot bigger than the y numbers, I want to do the y numbers here, okay? In order for the y numbers, the y's to eliminate to 0, we need the same number with the y's, one's positive, one's negative. Luckily, this is already a positive y term and that's a negative y term, so the signs are already there. But we're going to need to multiply both equations because there is no whole number times 8 that would give us 14, or no whole number times 14 that would give us 8. So this is what we briefly talked about yesterday. In order to make sure that we're going to get the same number with y, I'm going to take this 8 in the bottom equation and make it the multiplier in the top. I'm going to take that 14 that's in the top equation with the y and make that the multiplier in the bottom. But you notice I didn't make that a negative 14 because they already had different signs. And if I had brought the negative down here, that would have turned that also into a negative y. So we just are going to steal the numbers to make sure those are the same. Now we're going to multiply every part of both of these equations in order for our next step, okay? Since these are kind of huge numbers, I'm honestly going to pause the video and get the correct numbers just to the side here, okay? Okay, so what I did 8 times 15 to get that 120, 8 times negative 14 to get negative 112, 8 times 32 to get 256. 14 times negative 16 to get negative 224, 14 times 8 to get positive 112, 14 times negative 48 to get that negative 72. So now when I go over here, if we did this correctly, which we did, one of the variables should eliminate. Negative 112y plus 112y will go to 0. And now 120 minus 224 is going to go down to negative 104x equals 256 minus 672. And 256 minus 672 will get us negative 416. My last step to get x alone is to divide both sides by that negative 104. And then x will equal positive 4. Whoop. Okay. Now, we have one of our answers. I'm going to write that answer at the top so I don't lose track of it. X equals positive 4. You are not done solving this until we have an answer, though, for every letter, X, Y, and Z. Now, we could go back and deal with these originals, but I think it's going to actually be easier to continue using these two little guys that we got in the middle of the problem. So it doesn't matter which of these little guys that you chose that we got in our first little steps. I'm going to choose this one just because it's the first one for no real reason. And I'm going to take my answer of x equals 4, and I'm going to plug it in for x, and then I should be able to solve for y pretty easily. So down here, I'm going to go 15. Instead of x, I'm going to do parentheses and put in my answer of 4. So I'm substituting 4 in for that x. Then we can have minus 14y equals 32. And now we're going to solve this little bad boy for y. 15 times 4 will be 60. To get rid of y, we'll save the negative 14. We'll start by subtracting 60 from both sides. So we'll have negative 14y equals negative 28. Then our last step, we will divide both sides, and we'll get a nice y equals 2. Okay, so I'm going to copy that down up top, y equals 2. Now, we still need to get our z, but if you notice, these two little equations we got doesn't even have a z variable. So at this stage, we can use any of our first three, and we're going to substitute both the x and y. I'm going to be strategic. I like this third one because it's equal to 0. So I'm going to plug in 4 for x and 2 for y, and we should be able to solve for z down here. So I'm going to take negative, so I'm going to take negative 4 times my answer of x, which is 4, minus 2 times my answer of y, which is 2, minus 2 times my answer of 2. And this is plus 4z equals 0. Plus 4z equals 0. And now we're going to solve this. Negative 4 times 4 is negative 16. Negative 2 times 2 is negative 4. We haven't touched plus 4z equals 0. Negative 16 minus 4 is negative 20. Since they're already on the left side, we can combine them. To get z alone, we'll first add the 20. To get 4z equals 20, 420. And then we will divide each side by that 4, and we'll get z equals 5. Z equals 5. And then usually, your final answer needs to be x, comma, y, comma, z. So it would be 4, comma, 2, comma, 5 on this problem.